Hi, I'm Jenny Champeau, the director of the Book of Mormon Art Catalog, and joining me today is Sean Hopkin. Welcome,
Hello.
Sean.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Sean is the chair of the Department of Ancient Scripture at Brigham Young University, and he's one of the principal organizers of the Jewish and Latter-day Saint Academic Interfaith Dialogue Project. He's authored and edited numerous books and articles on Isaiah, the Hebrew Bible, Latter-day Saint beliefs, and medieval literature. And back in 2014, he was the very first chair of the Book of Mormon Association in religious education here at BYU. So today we're looking at chapters 11 through 17 of Mosiah. And the artwork we picked is by J. Kirk Richards. It's called Break the Bands of Death. And this was part of a series that Kirk did in 2020 on these Mosiah chapters. So first I just want to talk a little bit about how this artwork relates to these chapters. Let me start with a couple of scriptures here.
Okay, I would love that.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think he's got these verses. You've picked the ones he's got in mind, right?
Yeah,
Probably,
I
at
think
least
so.
According to the title.
Right.
This is spectacular, by the way. I just have to say that, and then we'll come back to the art.
Thank you. I
it's
appreciate
so
that.
good. Yeah.
So this is in Mosiah chapter 15, starting in verse 6. And after all this, after working many mighty miracles among the children of men, he shall be led, yea, even as Isaiah said, as a sheep before the shearer is dumb, so he opened not his mouth.
So I think one of the things, if I could just jump in really quickly here, you immediately get this sense that Abinadi is building from Isaiah. And that fits him in really well with other Book of Mormon prophets who have loved Isaiah from the beginning and actually have really structured their writings to interact with Isaiah over and over and over again. Mormon maybe a little bit less, but certainly you see him pulling these kinds of things in. But Nephi does this, Jacob does this, here's Abinadi doing it. Jesus himself is going to say, you should read Isaiah. It's a little circular because, of course, Isaiah says, thus saith the Lord. So, So here's what he's just quoted this to them in response to an accusation they give to him. And he's saying, you need to understand this role, this messianic role as Latter-day Saints and as Christians understand it, this role here. And so what he's quoting from, let me just give that to you. So it's here in Mosiah 14, verse 7, which is Isaiah 53, this beloved chapter for Latter-day Saints, honestly, and for all Christians, really. He was oppressed, he was afflicted, he opened not his mouth, he is brought as a lamb to the slaughter. So that's the first mention of this lamb imagery. As a sheep before her shears is dumb, so he opened not his mouth. And you really get, certainly in Isaiah's context, lambs and sheep would have been really familiar, and both in the sacrificial system, but also as a source of food, as a source of warmth, and the behaviors of sheep would have been understood. And there's sort of this ancient history of kings learning how to be good kings, they're shepherds first, or of leaders, right? Abraham, you get this tradition with David, Jacob, right? I just switched back and forth historically. But so there's this really beautiful lamb imagery. And then I think that's when, this is the launching point for Abinadi, I think now, to give us this breaking the bands of death, I think, here in these verses, right?
And I apologize, I should have said at the beginning, where we are in the Book of Mormon narrative is Abinadi has been brought before King Noah here, and this is his sort of speech before King Noah, right?
Yeah, right. So the priests of Noah have quoted Isaiah 52 as we have it today, and said, "Hey, why are you not preaching these victorious messages from Isaiah? We're those people. Like, we've done what we're the people that are fulfilling Isaiah's prophecies of triumph." And he's saying, "Okay, let's walk through the 10 Commandments and see how well you're actually fitting that model of morality, of ethics, of biblical ethics. And let me read, just turn the page, so to speak. Let's read Isaiah 53, and you're missing the role of the one who will suffer, the suffering servant, as he's known in biblical studies." Yeah, so this is what we're doing here. He's defending, but also teaching.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So going back to continue with Mosiah 15, now we're in verse 7. Yea, even so he shall be led, crucified and slain, the flesh becoming subject even unto death. the will of the Son being swallowed up in the will of the Father. And thus God breaketh the bands of death.
There's the first one.
Having gained the victory over death, giving the Son power to make intercession for the children of men. Having ascended into heaven, having the bowels of mercy, being filled with compassion towards the children of men, standing betwixt them and justice, having broken the bands of death.
There it is.
Taken upon himself their iniquity and their transgressions, having redeemed them and satisfied the demands of justice.
So, and thank you for giving us those connections. Just a little bit more with Isaiah. Those who know me know I do like to spend a little bit of time in Isaiah. But like this artwork that we're going to spend a little bit of time on here in just a moment, what Abinadi is doing and really what Isaiah is doing is quite visceral. This is a suffering servant. This is a rejected one. This is an excommunicated one from society, a cursed one, you might say, who then will triumph, right? But who is going to understand what it is like to experience loss, death. In fact, Isaiah's overriding concern. So he uses that lamb imagery as a lamb to the slaughter, and then you just read it. He will be slain, right, and crucified, but as a lamb to the slaughter. And this concern, who's going to declare his generation? He dies. What about the posterity is such a big deal in ancient societies. Who will declare his generation? He's cut out of the land of the living. He made his grave with the wicked. It pleased the Lord, I'm sort of skipping forward, it pleased the Lord to bruise him, and the Hebrew to crush him.
Oh, wow.
He hath put him to grief. And then this back to the lamb imagery, his soul an offering for sin. And so this is so rich with symbolism, this text is. And so then to have this beautiful artwork flow in the way Abinadi is doing this, through Isaiah and then into Isaiah, the way that Abinadi interprets it, these triumphant conclusions, but the triumph is enhanced by an understanding of the depth of the experience of sorrow and suffering.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So wow. That's maybe spending a little too much time here because we want to talk about this art, but they really connect beautifully together.
Yeah, I love that, and I think that segues perfectly into looking at the art because I think it also shows that duality of sort of coming down low. Even this pile of bones. But then Christ rising triumphant, almost like he's floating up as you see the bands snapping, the bands that are on his wrist like shackles, these bands of death. And you see a figure of the skeleton, maybe even a symbol of death, pulling on this chain maybe, but Christ is breaking free in a really triumphant image.
Yeah, and I don't know if Kirk Richards, we'd have to ask him if he would appreciate what I'm seeing here, but almost, like if you think of Marvel Comics, that is so inappropriate to talk about Kirk, but some of that artwork's quite nice, right? Anyway, but this heroic sort of snap, right? He gives you the snap here as someone, a heroic figure, but this is a heroic figure that the emphasis isn't necessarily on how he looks, it's on what he does.
Yeah.
It's not what Jesus looks like here, it's on his role as a breaker of bands. And look at the red robe that's so indicative of suffering, of sorrow. Of course, Isaiah 63 is going to talk about the one who comes from the east, dressed in robes of red, right? This is what happened as I trod the wine press, alone. Yeah. And so that imagery is here with I love that sort of little halo effect that he's given here.
He does, yeah. I'm so glad you pointed out the undefined facial features of Christ here, which is interesting and just leaves some room for the viewer to bring their own interpretations to the piece and, like you said, focus on the action. Now, this isn't an actual moment that's described in the scriptures. It's a little more thematic, maybe, like Kirk's being creative as an artist and thinking, okay, how do I visualize this idea of breaking the bands of death? But But I like that. It's not, we don't always see that in our Latter-day Saint art. A lot of it is just very narrative and, just illustrating.
Here's a moment, and now we're depicting it. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your response to that? Do you find that it helps you engage with the scriptures in a different way?
Well, really, really powerfully, which is not a surprise for his artwork, which is, I think, well known for having a really strong impact, and it does for me. If I were to compare it to some beautiful Latter-day Saint art, I think traditionally we have focused on resurrection scenes, triumphant, and they're sweet, they're peaceful, maybe they're triumphant, but they show life, they show sort of this peaceful triumph, right? And this is more the moment of triumph, and it's like he's ascending. We just read from Isaiah where he's made his grave, right? At least temporarily, right, with the wicked. And there may be echoes here of the descent into Sheol, into the spirit world, as 1 Peter 3 is going to discuss, and is so important to Latter-day Saints.
Yes.
Doctrine and Covenants 138 connects here. But this image, it's really rich here, this image of death, because we experience this, and sometimes as Latter-day Saints we just want to say, no, it's all beautiful, it's all good, and it is, eternally speaking, but part of that is really descending through it, really experiencing sometimes some prolonged sorrow and decay and dissolution.
Right.
You know?
And I love that this depicts the way Christ was our exemplar, and that we know that he's descended below all things, and that we can look to him.
We've all lost loved ones that's closer or further from us. I lost an older brother to cancer just a few years ago, my best friend. We grew up sharing a room, and he was on the top bunk, I was on the bottom bunk because he was older, so we got the top bunk, and we stayed close throughout our lives. And there's this sense of deep loss, and then the triumph there. And it's not just death, of course. We have so many deaths in our lives. And so this imagery, the loss of a career, the loss of a relationship, when things break apart that we had placed a lot of hope and that sort of were bound up in who we are and what our identity is, it can feel like we're just a skull, like just like remnants of what we thought life was going to be, and this is very real, right? And those that we love and should love suffer, and we suffer, and there is a savior, a heroic savior figure who meets us in those spaces and then helps resurrect us. But to honor the depths of those spaces, I think, is partly what Kirk Richards, this particular piece of art, and what his art often does, is to honor the wrestle, the struggle, and those words probably don't even convey it. And I would say that's why, as I was knowing we were going to be discussing this piece of artwork today, I thought, this connects with me on a visceral level and is meaningful to me. It meets me where I am in my spaces of loss, and gives me hope.
Yes, Thank you for sharing that personal experience and sharing your beautiful testimony too.
Thank you.
And thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, my pleasure, Jenny. This is beautiful. Thank you.